Keynote speaker. Dr. David Gallo is an award-winning oceanographer at the forefront of exploration whose work pushes the bounds of oceanic discovery. An enthusiastic ambassador for the sea, his TED Talk on underwater astonishment has reached more than 16 million viewers. And most recently, he co-led an expedition to create the first detailed and comprehensive map of the RMS Titanic. As a child, David had dreams of exploration. However, he was challenged by both ADD and learning disorder and told he had neither the grades nor the aptitude to pursue science as a career or education beyond high school. Dejected, he spent 6 years selling shoes. His dream was reignited by a National Geographic magazine article on deep sea exploration. Undaunted, he enrolled in college and with 3 years made his first dive to the bottom of the ocean. Dr. Gallo went on to earn his bachelor's and master's degree in geology from State University of New York at Albany and a doctorate in oceanography from the University of Rhode Island. His passion for exploration has never waned, and he remains personally committed to conveying the excitement and importance of ocean exploration to the public at large. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Dr. David Gallo.
That's very unusual, a scientist that speaks English. That was I normally don't like introductions, but that was great. I can't begin to tell you what a pleasure this is for me to speak with you, because I do believe, especially what I went through in my own life, that this is so important to, and actually the first people that got me into this was a long time ago, was Jeff Bezos, the richest guy on earth. Long before he had Amazon, his parents were very much interested in early childhood, from birth on to kindergarten. Same thing. Convinced me about how important that really was. But that's my topic. Oh, first of all, thank you. I want to thank Jen Bailey, Gallo, and Rich for getting me down here. And yes, there's a relationship. Rich is my cousin, both from a small town in central New York, a long way from the ocean. Our planet, and that's. Oh well, Mike, can you give me? You can see my ADD coming through. It's 20 minutes. Can you give me a warning? 5 minutes to go. Okay, great. So this is an amazing image of the planet, but it's a static image. It's a snapshot, and you couldn't get the Earth more wrong than thinking that that's Earth. The clouds are moving, the continents are moving, the waves are moving. People were there, 7 million people are there. So, and the issue with this is that sometimes it makes us think that we do know the planet really well because we can see it, and that we can predict what's coming next, and we can't, because, next slide please. I want to come back to this image, and this always touches me, puts a clump in my throat, because this dreaming, curiosity, a wondering at the sky, same thing being on the beach looking out to see the waves rolling, and these are emotional things. And when we look at the planet, as scientists, normally you don't let the emotions take over you, but this is such an important point in the evolution of a young person. Next, please. Just to show you how bad I was. And this isn't the worst. One of the worst days of my life was my kids finding my report cards from grade school. That's in high school, and you can see the grades are 75, I think, was passing, and I was failing everything. And in grade school, from the first grade I was in, first grade, I would get horrible grades, and also I had these check marks. Doesn't work to ability, disturbs others, talks out of turn. I still do, but every time I had to get their report card signed, it was painful. Painful to be in the class, painful to go home with my parents that had to sign it. And at the same time, I was exploring the coast of the edges of Owasco Lake. I was building model rockets. Every night I was out with my telescope looking at the moons of Jupiter, and I wanted to be a scientist. Next, please. So that's National Geographic that turned me around. And actually, it was this book that I read. I have a very difficult time reading. I have lots of books, but nonverbal learning disability. This book I read about 10 times, Kon-Tiki, when I was in grade school. And it's about Thor Heyerdahl, an explorer that sailed with his team across the Pacific to Easter Island. And so this locked me in, because this was all about stories and about emotion and exploration of the ocean. And so at the end of high school, as you heard, I started selling shoes. I miss it, by the way. I enjoyed selling shoes. And one day I was flipping through that National Geographic, and there was that one image, hand-drawn image on the right side that showed an underwater mountain with a little speck on it. And that little speck is the submarine Elvin. And it was like someone pushed a button, and I said, that's what I want to do. I'm going to do that. And next, please. And it was about, I went to SUNY Albany. It was a rough beginning, but in 2 years I got my bachelor's and then made my first dive in the sub. And speaking of the sub, I just want to tell you a quick story. This is my COVID shape. And I'm supposed to go out in a submarine in September. I might be able to get in the submarine, but getting out is going to be a problem. And once I was in Atlanta, I made a joke about that to an audience. And I said, there's not enough, because that's the home of Spanx. I said, there's not enough Spanx on Earth to get me into that sub anymore. And little did I know, but some of the Spanx management was there at my talk, so I started getting these emails. Would you be interested in? No, I'm not, no. I hit my boundaries. All right, so back to Earth, always changing, and that's the thing I love about the planet. It's something we forget, that tomorrow can never be like it is today. Every scale, it's changing. The big scales, continents moving, happen very slowly. Smaller scale, hurricanes and things like that happen very quickly. Next, please. That's the Earth without all the clouds and everything. All we've done is rotated it around and looking at the Pacific Ocean with no clouds. 70% covered with water. Average depth about 2 miles. And the thing that gets me too about this is we've only explored 8-9%. So basically, we don't know what's out there. We were living on a pretty much unknown planet. And yet, every time we look, we find something amazing. Next, please. That's a map of the Earth showing the seafloor now. And the one thing I want you to see is down the middle of the ocean, it's like the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. You see that rough topography. That's an underwater mountain range, 50,000 miles long, called the Mid-Ocean Ridge. Never predicted, but there it is. And it's got thousands of peaks higher than the Alps. It's got all sorts of valleys that crisscross it that are many times wider and deeper than the Grand Canyon. We've got rivers that run at the surface, we call them currents, but ones that run at the bottom of the ocean as well. So rivers that actually cut across the bottom of the sea. And where they go over this topography, they make underwater waterfalls, because this dense water goes over. And actually the tallest waterfall, the greatest one on the planet, not Angel Falls or anything like that, it's up between Iceland and Greenland. It's called the Denmark Strait. It's huge. It's like 5 times higher than the greatest waterfall on the planet. So all of that stuff we're finding at the bottom of the sea, most of it not predicted, and in only that few percent that we've explored. Next, please. Oh, back to Earth again, and one of the things, again, plate tectonics, that this is not static. Can we have the next one, that the Earth is changing? And, we can make science very difficult if we want, because climate, so the Earth is changing constantly. Oceans come and go, continents move around and collide. It's called plate tectonics. We get earthquakes and volcanoes along with it. Climate's always been an issue, as you know. And this is one way of explaining some parts about climate, is that the Earth in its orbit is not always circular. Sometimes it's elliptical. Sometimes we tilt more toward the sun, sometimes away from the sun. And it's a rhythm and it's a pattern. And we can see that in the climate record. So that's one way of understanding that we can understand climate. We've got to get down to the nitty-gritty, but the big pictures we can kind of get. Now, normally, if you're looking at science of a sphere, next, please. And anyone here play tennis? Yeah, you must surely know this then. So, the way we do science these days, in my mind, is that we try to teach it from a book. You know, I'm a big fan of letting teachers teach. Let the teachers teach. And so this is actually a tennis ball. And can you imagine having to learn, never having played tennis, never been on a tennis court, never holding a tennis racket? Can't test that. There's no standardized test for passion or for curiosity. You can test this, but it has nothing to do with driving curiosity, keeping curiosity alive, unless you're a mathematician. I mean, everything is there, spin, and you don't even know the pressure of a tennis ball. I'm sure most pros don't know the pressure of a tennis ball, or the circumference, or the thickness, or the flexural rigidity of a racket. So for me, the way I got through school was to stick with the stories, and then I would hang facts on those stories. Next, please. Okay, I want to show you something. I don't have too much from the undersea world, because you can see a lot of that online. But I want to show you this. This is an octopus. This was on PBS, but I've kind of stitched it together in a different way. Okay, can you run that, please? I hope you can see it. It's a little faded. So you'll see a little octopus area sitting there. That's a bad place for an octopus because predators can spot it easily. There he is, huffing and puffing, doesn't want to be looked at. And he sees in the distance a half of a coconut shell. Off he goes. They always walk on 2 feet, so predators say, what is that? You know, they don't wear 8 legs. And they're trying to mimic coconuts that are drifting waterlogged across the bottom. And there he goes. And lo and behold, there's a shell. He says, that'll do. Down inside the shell he goes. But still, you know, he's very obvious to animals that might be around him. So he picks up the shell, which is not cumbersome, and kind of moves it across the ocean, because he sees another shell, the other half. Off he goes, there it is. And then he says, okay, I get that half and this half, put them together. There you go. And I can peek over the top with my eyes until I see prey that I want. Here he goes, peeking over the top. I love this. This always amazes me. And he sees a crab on the bottom. Oh yeah, he has to move it to the right position to get the crab. There he goes again. There he goes to peeking, and then off he goes. Zip, and back to his little coconut cave. And this was all surprising enough, but what really got to me is that if it wanted to move a long distance, it gets inside its shell, pulls the ends together, and instead of trying to drag it across the seafloor, decides the best way to do it is to roll. There he goes. Amazing. And you know, again, some of this behavior never predicted. And the ocean's full of these things, from the surface down to the bottom. We thought there should be no life on Earth below where there's sunlight. And most of the ocean is pitch black and cold. There he goes. Yep, next, please. That's that mountain range that I showed you beneath the sea. And plate tectonics is interesting because you can see in the Atlantic Ocean that bit about northwest Africa fits right into the shoreline here, because they used to be together 180 million years ago, or so. And then in the south, same thing. That bit of South America fits together with Africa. And the story of plate tectonics is fantastic. You can make it complicated if you want, but again, the idea that continents are moving around is just amazing. Next, please. The submarine that I have to squeeze into. This is the submarine called Elvin. That's a support ship in the background called Elvin. There's about 50 people on that support ship, making sure you're alive, stay alive. Once you get in, those 2 people on the sub are swimmers. They're there to make sure the sub is okay. So you pick up the sub, put it in the water. They're there to make sure that everything is fine. The scientific equipment outside the sub is right where it's supposed to be. And then they leave the sub, and inside that sub there are 3 people. And a pilot, 2 scientists. You look out a porthole about that big, about that thick. And everyone right now is thinking the same thing, very important. Should I have gone to the bathroom one more time? But it's a long day. It's 2.5 hours to get to the bottom, 2.5 hours to get back up, so a 5-hour commute every day. And that gives you 5 hours on the bottom to explore. It goes about a half a mile an hour, so you can't get a lot of exploring done, but you can sure see a lot of exciting things. Next, please. This is the dive to the bottom, just starting. As I said, in the beginning, it goes through light blue, dark blue, deep blue, and then pitch black for about 2 hours. And what's amazing is as you float through that place and look out the window, you see all these animals that bioluminesce, like fireflies in the night, except you can't quite see the bodies. You see these shapes and colors, red, yellow, orange, all the way to the bottom. Even in the deepest sea, Jim Cameron, the movie director, went to the deepest part of the sea. Same thing. He said he saw the same thing even in the deepest part of the sea. And again, we thought that world, no sunlight, should be empty of animals, and now we find it's really rich with that kind of animals. Next. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there's some of the twinkling animals. A lot of it is reflection from our own lights. Every shape and size you could ever imagine. And these are about that big. Some are longer. Some are as long as this room. You never know what you're going to come into. And there we get to the bottom. That's hot water coming out of the seafloor because you have magma. It's all volcanic along the mountain range. And we were sure, because it's horrible, it's very toxic. It's very deep, so high pressure, toxic water, that there should be no life there at all. And instead, we find incredible communities of life that thrive in the deep sea. And the way that they work, next please, is that there's a microbe that actually eats that chemical stuff and makes sugars for these bigger animals and food for the bigger animals. A lot of people are saying that we should use robots, not submarines. And again, it comes back to this curiosity. I think the importance of being there. The same thing, so robots are much better at exploring than a submarine. 10 hours and it's cold and it's miserable and it's very cramped. Even if you're very thin, it's very cramped. But to me, it's like going to a concert live or a sporting event live. Is that being there, yeah, you've got to drive, you've got to park, you've got to stumble in with all these people, seats uncomfortable, maybe in the wrong place, people jostling around you. But being there does something to you. It just permeates your spirit and your emotions because it's, as I said, being there. And I think that's what this does for you. It's not so much that you collect more data. To me, it's about what it does to the individual and their thought process of actually being in that location. That's the submarine sitting on the bottom. Again, 3 people. You can't see very far. Maybe here to that wall is about it from the sub. And again, what you see is just outdoor. You're probably the first person to see it, and you could be the last person to see some of the things we've seen. Next, please. That's a still of some of those animals. In one spot, there are 300 species of animals. Again, they're living off of that poisonous fluid. So what we're looking at is chemosynthesis, chemical coming from inside the earth, not from the solar down, but from the inside of the earth out. And if I had some program like this, because I didn't know I had ADD, but having something like this would have certainly made it a lot more palatable for me. Thank you.